Good morning and welcome to Morning Coffee with Brigid. I am Brigid Burke, and today is the 11th of February 2025. And I see Joanne is already in the live chat. Good morning, Joanne. Today is another gray day. I think one of the reasons I like to get up really early is because if there's going to be a little pop of color, which there actually was, probably maybe a little after, 6:15-ish, like around that time, I was able to catch it in the sky before it becomes totally gray again, because we are in this kind of pattern of storms, of multiple storms that are coming in there. And so we're having like one gray day after another. I mean, yesterday was actually quite nice in terms of the sun, but it's a it's still, unfortunately, the groundhog might be right. It's probably still winter. It's probably going to stay winter until March, but who knows? Maybe after, because I know next week we're supposed to have some really, really bitter cold days again. Monday and Tuesday next week, which I'm not looking forward to, but it is what it is. So so today is, okay, I took a day off yesterday because I had an interview in the morning. And I know there's people who want to know, how did the interview go? And the going to be almost 40 here was what Joanne's saying. Oh, okay, well, that's good. Yeah, I don't know how much is going to really, I feel like it's not going to be like bitterly cold. I feel like south of here is going to get worse than what we're going to get. Like, I think I'm pretty far north in the realm of what kind of snow and ice and stuff is expected later today. I don't think we're expected to get very much. The weekend, though, it looks like there's going to be some. So I'm glad I've got virtual classes this weekend. But I do have one client who's supposed to come to the house, so I don't know how that's going to work out. But yes, yeah, exactly is what you're saying. So I'm going to talk a bit. I will talk a bit about the interview. And Alex is on. Good morning, Alex. Yes, once we have a little group on and, see how many people actually are going to come on this morning, because, it varies. Up here, that's shorts weather, with Joanne saying, oh, yeah, but actually in the wintertime, yeah, I don't tend to wear shorts anyway. But yes, understanding what you're saying there. When it gets into the 40s, we're just kind of like heat wave, So I can completely relate to that. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about the interview that I had yesterday, which, I mean, the short answer on the interview is it went well. That's the short answer. I'll talk a little bit more about the long answer in a moment. And but yesterday was it's been kind of a strange week. I don't know. I've been kind of I have moments where I feel very, very joyful, very, very calm, and very, very clear about what my future direction is. And then I have moments where I feel like I don't know anything. So, with your heat situation, you live in them. Oh, okay, understood. Yeah, I have been so like mood wise, I have been kind of like up and down and up and down. And so sometimes when people check in with me, and they'll say, at different times, depending on how I'm feeling, if I know I'm being a moody little whatever, then I sometimes just leave things aside, and I'm like, you know what, I'll just answer stuff later. Not that anything that anybody's writing to me is wrong or bad or anything like that. It's just, if I feel like I'm not gonna, either I'm not gonna answer something fully, or I'm gonna be cranky about it, then I sometimes will just be like, you know what, I'll look at it later. Leela, hello, good morning. February cold never feels as cold as January cold, if that makes any sense. Oh, good morning, Leela. Okay, good. Glad that you could join us. And Melissa's on. I see Melissa, and I feel like the comments kind of scrolled up. I don't know if I can scroll down. No, it doesn't seem to want to let me do that. So anyway, if I've missed you and saying hello, good morning. If I've missed a comment, because I saw Melissa was on, I see Leela's on, and I know Alex and Joanne are on. If there's somebody else on who it scrolled past already, my apologies. Yes, but you're right, Leela. It's definitely, yeah, because the sun is higher in the sky, and it's definitely, like, now we're seeing the sun. I think the sunrise now is just before 7 a.m. So we're starting to see that, the day's getting longer. It's starting to be more evident now, whereas right after the solstice, it usually takes at least a couple of weeks for you to really kind of notice that anything might be changing. So now we're at that point. Okay. So now that I have a little group of us here, I will talk a little bit about yesterday, and then I'll use that to kind of dovetail into the topic that I have today. And so yesterday morning, I got up really early because I had an interview with somebody in England at 11 a.m. their time, which was 6 a.m. my time. And I was up, I was, dressed and ready and everything. And when I talked to the woman, she was just like, "What time is it by you?" She's like, "I want to take that into account during this interview," just because, it isn't probably considered that to be a ridiculously early hour. Let's just say that I found the interview very encouraging. The sense that I got was that in terms of academics, in terms of my ability to do research and to do, the master's portion of this particular program that I'm looking at, they said we have no issue with your credentials whatsoever. Like, it's very clear that you know this. It's very clear you know theory. Her one area of focus that she was concerned about was, she said, well, you work a lot in Jungian theory. She says, and the program, this is a, good morning, Kathleen. She says, this morning is this is a psychodynamics. So it's focused more on object relations theory. She says, you might not be happy in this. She goes, we do have a Jungian sector if you want to do that. She says, I just want to make sure that if you get accepted to this program, she says, because you're in it for 4 years and you're hit the ground running doing clinicals. She says, this is mainly a clinician's program. We are training you to be a psychotherapist. And yes, we have classes on the theory and everything. She says, now you really haven't been through that much therapy. So she said, I don't, she said, if you were currently in therapy, she said, then that would be something, a starting place. She said, but you might not be able to start in that right away, and then we'd have to kind of move into it. Now, again, they're not saying that won't happen or it's not a problem. But she said what they're probably going to do is they schedule a second interview. She says, just to make sure that you're really happy in this, like this is what you want. She says, because it's 3 years, that are technically study of like what they call the masters. And she says, we do that, she says, in order to be able to issue people an international visa, they have to be enrolled as international students. She said, so we have to do it that way. And then your 4th year is all clinicals. She says, you're just working with patients for the last year. So that is what the program is. And because she says, you're upping your life, you're giving everything up, you're going to be moving over here. She says, we want you to be happy. She says, we want you to make sure you're doing the thing that is legitimately going to make you happy. But, part of it was, she was talking a little bit. She says, tell me about your personal life and background a little bit. And so I did tell her a little bit about my family situations, kind of where I'm at now, where I've come from a little bit. And it's interesting because I find that when I discuss that with people, I don't talk about my father. And she picked up on that. She said, because the stuff with my mother is so much more, it overshadows the other. She kind of is the personality. She's like the photo bomber and everything. She's the one who's kind of in the way and kind of in theory. And my dad was a very quiet person. You're here. Yay. Hi, Sam. Good afternoon. Good to see you. I'm just talking about the UK. So, and you're there. So it's interesting. So we're talking about this school thing. So I was telling her about that. And she says, I noticed you. So I explained to her, I said, well, my father is somebody who's he was a very quiet person. And he had moments when he could get angry at stuff. But he was, but at the same time, he generally speaking, he was mellow. If I made certain life decisions, and my mother would say to me, well, your father's going to be very upset with that. And then I talked to my father and he would go, it's your life. He's like, do what makes you happy. I don't care. He was extremely laid back. He was not the type of father who was like gonna, I'm the man and I'm going to assert myself. Like, he was never like that. He was not that he wasn't soft. He was an ex-military man. He was, he had like an engineering kind of a mind. He was that kind of a person. He wasn't like a reader or anything. He was not religious. And yeah, he did trend very conservative, which that was an area where we didn't agree. But also, even though he had very strong views, if I said to him, well, I don't agree with your views, he wasn't like yelling at me for it. He was like, all right, so you don't agree with my views. Like, he didn't care. It was like, it was fine. So, and so in a certain sense, I found that he was somebody who I gravitated to more because there was less drama around him. He didn't make drama. He didn't worry about stuff he couldn't control. He would my mom would come out and be very upset, like, oh, this thing happened. And he would just sit there with his pipe and he would go, go. He'd be smoking his pipe and then he'd take it out of his mouth and go, it's too bad. And he put his pipe back in his mouth and he'd just keep going. he just didn't. And my father is his father was they're Irish English descent. And I was mentioning this to this woman in the interview, and she said, "Oh," she says, "your father's of English descent." She goes, "Did you think that maybe the reason you're attracted to England is," she says, "because you've already, you have the drama of your mother's energy, and you would rather go to a place connected with your father's ancestry and explore that energy and that mood and that ancestral track, so to speak." And I thought, "Oh, I had not even thought about that." But again, coming from the type of therapy that she does, it completely makes sense that she would pick up on that. And I thought maybe that's, I was talking to my sister about it yesterday, and she goes, "Oh yeah, maybe that's a good point, So I don't know, maybe it does have something to do with dad and dad energy that I've not really, that's always kind of been in the background in my life. So interesting. But probably what the next step is going to be a second interview, because they're going to want me to talk to somebody else in the program. Just make sure this is what you want before they issue kind of an acceptance letter, which again, I mean, strictly speaking, they could decide it's not for me. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to say, oh yes, this is definitely going to happen. I can say that, I had another friend do a reading on it for me afterwards. And the cards he got were all phenomenally good. So it does look to me like this will work out this way. But, like I said, at the moment, we're just saying, okay, everything looks very promising. And Alex says, "Wow, yeah. Right now, everything looks very promising. So we'll see, where we end up with it." But if there is an acceptance, what an interview, Alex. Yeah, it was. In a way, it was kind of exhausting, because I'm trying to think on my feet about things, because you don't know how to prepare for these kinds of interviews. And all the questions she asked, by the way, were very relevant, very good. It wasn't like, she was asking me anything like, "Why is she asking me this?" Like, there was I didn't feel any of that. I felt like she was very, they said, "We are very concerned that the people we bring into this program, that we're going to look after you for the 4 years that you're in it. Like that, that you're okay, that, mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, you're okay." Like it's that's their priority for the people who they enroll. So they want to make sure that before you make the decision that, you know everything, and that you're comfortable. So yeah, so that's kind of where we were with that. And she did ask me why I'd never gone through therapy, and I said, "Well, it's expensive, that's why." And we were talking about therapy prices, and she goes, "Oh yeah, it's much cheaper in Britain." She's like, it's not cheap, but it's much cheaper." So she had said, yeah, she said, "You would probably have to arrange to meet with somebody at least once a week." And that is a standard, by the way, for anybody working in psychotherapy, is that you have to go through therapy yourself. And that, to me, that actually makes very good sense, because if you're going to actually work with somebody, then you should know a little bit, you need to have been through the process yourself. Otherwise, you run the risk that you are going to project a lot of your stuff onto your clients, that they're going to end up becoming the projection board for your stuff. So there needs to be an awareness of what you're going through, what's unconscious for you. So I think that's a very good thing, and I don't have any issue with that at all. It's just something that I've only done here in a crisis, because we all know how American insurance works. I mean, they pays for something like 6 sessions or something. It's just kind of like, well, you should be all better after that. It doesn't pay for long-term therapy, but insurance isn't designed to pay for long-term anything, really. Usually that's why people who have long-term issues generally have supplemental kinds of insurance. So anyway, so that's the way that the interview went. Then I went to lunch with some colleagues, and you said it's school for psychodynamic therapy. I'm not even familiar with all the different types. Yes, psychodynamic psychotherapy. And what that means, the term psychodynamic means that basically the idea that the psyche is basically dynamic, that it's moving, that it's active, that there is an unconscious. There are some aspects of psychology or some psychological schools that only focus strictly on the conscious mind and on how you rationalize things, and on, or may just strictly be focused on the chemical aspects, say, of psychological issues. So this is something that says that in the Freudian tradition says, no, you have an unconscious, and your background and your ancestry and your family stuff, like all that all plays a role in who you are, and it doesn't necessarily play a conscious role. So it's psychodynamic. It's like there's an interaction between the unconscious and conscious psyche. So yeah. So the idea is to uncover material that's been suppressed, or uncovering material that's been, that may be unconsciously influencing the narrative, that kind of a thing. So, and again, I'm very familiar with object relations theory and how it works, because the person who I worked with is that. Interesting, good info to know. Thank you. Oh, you're welcome. So yeah, so anyway, so that's what that was about. Now, when I went to lunch the other day, the topic, it doesn't seem like anywhere that I go with anybody that the topic turns to current politics, and it's not a topic I really want to talk about. And you can't tell people not to talk about stuff, but there's been a whole lot of concerns about things that are going on, and and anyway, I don't want to get into the specifics of everything on this live stream. But there are some very dangerous things going on. So in other words, there are decisions that are made by unelected people that the courts come in and say, no, you can't do that, and it's being done anyway. Okay, so that's kind of, there's different policy decisions that are happening. One interesting one my sister called me about, because she asked, my sister and I both had legal name changes completely from our birth names. So she said to me, do you have a birth certificate with your current name on it? I said, yes. When I got the court-ordered name change, I called the Office of Vital Statistics and said, I want an amended birth certificate. And so she said, oh, I never did that. I'm going to go do that. Because apparently, now I don't know if this is true or not, because that's going to get to the point of what I'm going to talk about today. Supposedly, now I have a passport that's renewed through, it was recently renewed, let's put it that way. And so, but anybody who doesn't have their passport recently renewed, it could be, if you're a woman, they were saying if the name on your birth certificate does not, in other words, the name that you're putting on your passport does not match the name on your birth certificate, then you will be denied a passport. And I'm thinking, well, women get married and take their husbands' names all the time. I mean, I know maybe it's less common now, but if you're doing that, then obviously that's not going to be the name on your birth certificate, and you're not going to amend your birth certificate to have your spouse's name. Like, that doesn't make any sense to me. So I don't know if I'm missing something there. But so in other words, she was trying, making sure all of the documentation says the right thing. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff that's going on. So, okay. So with all of that, I'm like, okay, this is it's very clear. I'm not here to have a discussion of this, but I'm just here to say, like, okay, it's a very chaotic landscape right now. And a lot of people are saying, okay, the rules are being broken. Like, where is this all going to go? Where are we going to end up in the chaos of all this? Okay. And so that leads me to today's discussion based on the readings I did this morning. Some of them were from Azrael. Some of them were just my regular cartouche readings. And for those of you, who, well, obviously probably most people on here know me, but it's, I use Way of Cartouche, which I've used for over 30 years, because that particular deck, for some reason, no matter what I get in any other reading, whatever I do in tarot, whatever I do in any other oracle system, for some reason, the cartouche readings, I have to say they're right like 99.9% of the time. And generally, if they're wrong, it's because when I go back and look at the reading, it's because I was trying to impose a particular interpretation on it, which, hey, when you're learning, we've all been there, right? Or, and it could be positive or negative, right? But so the cartouche readings basically were saying, yeah, this is a time of, it kept giving me Sirius, which is, the Sirius card is having to do with the star Sirius. And it was basically saying, okay, there's a lot of upheaval. There's almost like there's work to be done, and this is kind of stretching the limits. This is testing limits. This is kind of like, where are we going to deprogram ourselves of old ways of doing things? And Azrael's message on it this morning was, he says, it was something like Lancho Dodds Grosp, like, that the fall of something has a vexing sting. And so I said, well, what's falling? And I kept getting the Ta card, which is the card for the masculine. Okay. It's in fall, it's in free fall, and on its way down, it's causing hurt. Okay. So that was the way it was characterized to me. So they said basically what their advice was to people more generally was just wait. Because also, now I'm not quite sure how close we are to Mercury retrograde pre-shadow. We might actually be in it because I feel like Mercury retrograde starts like early March, and we're already almost to the middle of February. And today, by the way, there is what is it? I think Joanne asked me about this last night, and I just didn't have the information other than that tomorrow's a full moon. But the full moon is going to, on the full moon, it's like, I think it's the sun is going to square Uranus. And when that happens, the last time that happened, I think they said there was a massive earthquake in Turkey. And right now there is a lot of geomagnetic activity. Literally one of the channels I watch said, if you live in the Aegean, like if you live around Greece, you know, southern Italy, think like get out, like, because it seems like there's a massive earthquake coming. I know there was a volcanic activity recently and some earthquakes, but those are, they seem to be small compared to what this is implying in the next 96 hours, I guess, was what was said. So I don't know whether that happens or not, remains to be seen, but all of the scientific signals are there that something is going on. Like there's this very rare burst of earth energy that frequently comes before that happens. So yeah, so there's a whole lot of shifting and changing that's going on. And yeah, and the Uranus energy is just making trouble all over the place. But also we have to remember that when we've got two planets that are close to us, actually we've got Mars in retrograde too. Everything close to us is in retrograde, or about to go into retrograde within the next couple of weeks. So when it does that, then our sense of things is not clear. Okay, we're not able to we're not able to see clearly what is going on. And that leads me to my discussion for today, which was of the moon card. Okay, because the moon energy, whether I'm using the astrology deck that I use or whether I'm using regular tarot, this energy seems to come up a lot. Now, okay, so let's talk about, there are a couple things I want to talk about. First of all, there's our traditional associations with the moon, and a lot of them are the same. Those of you who follow this live stream know that Azrael has said that there has been a flip, that energetically, that the sun is now feminine and the moon is now masculine, right? And apparently that is still a thing. So now I had done a podcast for my Patreon subscribers on the idea of a feminine sun, looking at the Japanese goddess Amaterasu, and you know what that feminine solar myth, how that's different from a masculine solar myth. Okay, but then the question then becomes, well, what does a masculine moon look like? Now we have a lot more examples of this, and I was thinking the most obvious one is the god Chandra, who is in Vedic astrology or in Hinduism and in Hindu astrology. Chandra is a figure that is there. Now, interestingly, when I was looking up some stuff on Chandra and his associations in the Vedic system, and Chandra is okay. He is a god who has 27 wives. Okay, his 27 wives are called we call them lunar mansions, because they have to do with the different. When I talk about decans, like how each sign is divided into threes. So just by way of example, we're in Aquarius now. We're at about the 11th, and then we move into So okay, so let's just say January 21st was the start of Aquarius, right? So from January 21st to the 31st, that's the first 10 days. That's the first decan, DEC, from decimal, decan, meaning 10, deca. Okay, so that's the first 10. So then from basically the 1st to roughly the 11th is 10th or 11th is the second decan, and that's what we're right at the end at. So we're getting ready to go into the third decan of Aquarius, which will run right up until Pisces begins. Okay, so there's it's kind of like the time period is broken up into threes, and so you have these different decans that are associated with that. So these decans within the signs are called the lunar mansions. There's actually listed to be 27 of them. So when you are born in Vedic astrology, one of the things that is important is they call it, what is your nakshatra, which is the term for birth star, is what the way they often translate it, like your birth star. Like these are the stars, these are the lunar mansions, these are the mansions of the moon. So So yeah, so the one of the main characteristics that we see of a masculine moon is that it's something we normally associate with Venus, at least mythologically, which is that he's fickle. He's fickle. He's a player. You know, he wants to he's kind of the Don Juan of the universe. You know, the kind of paramour kind of guy. He wants to. There's a story of him, having an affair with the wife of Brihaspati, who we think of as Jupiter. You know, who's the guru of all the devas. Sneaking off with his wife Tara. There's a lot about the nature of the moon, and so the moon therefore often is in conflict with a lot of the other planets because it's a little more chaotic. It's a little bit more fickle. So like I said, may feel one day one way and not another way another day. But this is being attributed to a male deity and not to a female deity, though the moon is connected to the house of the mother, Cancer energy, and the house of the mother still. So it's still definitely very strongly connected to mother energy and the sign of Cancer. So that leads us to our card. Excuse me. So when we look at the moon card, hopefully you can see this on this tiny little screen. But obviously we have the moon and the moonlight. Now, these little things that are kind of coming off the moon, they look like little flecks of light. If you get really close to them, they look a little bit like they are. I connect them with the Hebrew letter Yod in a way. And we've talked a lot about Yod aspects. When you have a Yod aspect in your chart, they call it the finger of God. It's like it's point whatever the apex is of that point. It's pointing whatever house it's pointing to. There's some element of destiny there. I have a Yod aspect that points at my 6th house, so that has a lot to do with my work and probably work in health and healing and things like that as well. So, which is kind of interesting that I'm taking the track that I'm taking. And I was looking at somebody's chart the other day who had a double Yod. They had a Yod pointing. Sometimes people have that where it's pointing at 2 different houses that are connected. So it can be interesting sometimes. So these are almost like little Yods, right? And you've got these 2 dogs, and one looks more like a regular kind of puppy dog, and this one looks a little more like a wolf. Okay, so you have this idea of the domesticated dog versus the wild one. Okay, and so you've got them both howling at the moon. So there's almost the idea that, whether we're talking about our domesticated self, right, the face that we present that is acceptable to society, the face that we present that, for social interaction, the one that is tamed in some degree, but also the wilder side that we may have, speaking of the unconsciously, or maybe consciously for some people. Both of these are howling at the moon, right? So it's like you're still subject to the emotions, regardless of whether we're talking about unconscious content or whether you're talking about conscious content. And of course, we're seeing it surrounded by water. They're almost on this strip of land, but there's a path, and there's a path that almost goes into the mountains here. Now, the mountains that they're going into, you see these 2 pillars. Now, there's another card. Pop quiz for my tarot students. What other card actually has those pillars on it? Does anybody know? I will find it and show it to you because, and I may have mentioned this in class, but I mentioned a lot of stuff in class, so people may or may not remember it. Oh, and by the way, tarot workshop on Saturday from 11 to 1 Eastern time. I know Ellen's going to be there, and I don't know if anybody else wants to join. It's up on Wix now if you want to register for that. Okay, let me find here we go. Yes, it is this card. It is the Death card. And because you will see now, again, this may be very hard to see, but if you get really close, you will see that there's like a little sun rising over here and that the 2 pillars are right there also. Alex just said Temperance. Well, good guess. But yeah, the 2 pillars are here. And as you can see, there's like a setting sun. Okay. So what these very likely represent, and it's quite possible that there are other interpretations of this, or the sun. Well, the pillars actually represent the Western land. It represents kind of the edge of the earth, where something is there supposed to be there called the pillars of Heracles or the pillars of Hercules. Okay, and that's probably what these represent. They represent that space that's like out at the edge. Oh darn, I got the wrong mixed up. It's okay. Good guesses actually. But this one And when you don't have them in front of you, then it's not that easy, always that easy to remember. But yeah, but this is it seems like these are the pillars that are moving on. So in other words, this is like that liminal space between an ending and a beginning. These represent the pillars at the edge of the world. What's beyond that, right? What's the new place beyond that? And now you also have the little guy down here who looks a little like a scorpion, okay, kind of, but also kind of looks like a lobster. You know how those big crustaceans, how they all kind of look. It doesn't exactly look like a crab, although sometimes this is a figure that is associated with the sign of Cancer. And actually on this card, it probably is. Some people say it's Cancer or Pisces, or maybe even Scorpio. Like it's water energy regardless, okay? I always look at it. I always think of that George Carlin bit where he's talking about like how he's a fussy eater, and I can completely relate to him. And how he finds lobsters terrifying. He says, he says anything walking at me coming sideways with big pincers somehow doesn't make me hungry. He's like, I just think, look at the big bugs, step on it before it gets to the children. Like, yeah, I remember that bit. It was really funny, but that's how he saw that. And but nonetheless, we're definitely seeing the astrological association here. We have an association here with water and with the depths. So you have this, and yeah, and there is a path through the mountains here, but it's a dark path and it's lit. There's, like I said, with all these little yods falling, there's almost this sense of divine purpose. But moonlight, as we know, is not as clear as sunlight. Okay, sunlight is not as it's not as clear, and the fact that there's this implication that there's this that we're at this end land here suggests that yes, we know something's come to an end. We know something new is beginning. What the heck's going on, like, or how, or what, or the details, like there's no clarity there. Okay, and that's the problem with the moon card. So when you're dealing with that energy in that way, there's a couple of different things that can possibly happen. So on the one hand, maybe we'll say on the more, I'll use the term negative end of it, the moon can indicate a deception. It can indicate when our emotions might take over in a situation and inflate what a situation is. We may think, we might be deceived into thinking that something's better than what it is. But it also can be that we're deceived into thinking that something's worse than what it is, okay? So the bottom line is we don't know. There's information coming in, and because it's kind of in this space where it's shedding some light on something, but we really can't see the big picture yet, it's like we don't know. There's this other card. I have the Mystical Cats deck, and this is the moon card here, which I think is interesting because you have this cat with these glowing eyes, and yeah, you do see the moon in the background, and he's almost kind of walking through this little path with the mushrooms and everything. Like there's definitely a strong, and this one I think recalls the way in which cats are able to see at night. So it actually has more of an inflection of the positive side of the moon, which is like use your cat's eyes, night vision kind of thing, meaning follow your instincts. Follow your intuition. You may be in a situation where you need to, where what the heart tells you and what the gut tells you is going to be more accurate than what the head tells you, because we're not working in the head space. The realm of the sun is the head space. Now, kind of getting back to the idea of the moon as masculine, I think what this might mean, at least one possible aspect of this, is the fact that now we are trying to come to terms with emotions. Now, and I'm going to make a generalization here, okay? So forgive me for this, but I feel like in general, men are not in touch with their emotions, okay? And I don't mean to say that there aren't men who are. Obviously there are, but men are not. We don't live in a society where when boys are raised, that their emotions are privileged. Their emotions, it's more like, the whole boys don't cry, suck it up, man up, be this, that, right? And even women are kind of taught that as well, that is the way to be, stop being hysterical, right? Stop your tears, you're being dramatic about this, that, and the other thing, right? When you are legitimately upset about something and legitimately expressing emotion, when people keep telling you that, then you just feel more and more ashamed of having emotions, right? With boys, I think, and with men, I think there's a particular thing too, that they're gonna somehow look weak by showing emotion. And this is a problem that still exists and still goes on. I mean, it's because it's systemic, it's unconscious. It's been part of what the cultural narrative is about how we are supposed to behave socially. So generally speaking, when women get very, very upset with men because they, well, he just doesn't get it. He doesn't care. He's just watching football. See that. Well, that's the way he's been trained. Okay. And that's and men have to kind of consciously want to untrain from that. But a lot of times they don't quite see the value. So I think that having the idea of shifting to a masculine moon really puts the onus on the masculine to come to terms with the emotional, because I think the moon definitely still has this connection to the emotional. But I feel like the message is, that you need to understand the value of your instincts, the value of your intuition, and the value of what's going on in the heart. If we are indeed moving towards Treta Yuga, which I don't have proof that we are necessarily, but I think there's as much convincing evidence for that as there is for moving, out of Kali Yuga. I think most people tend to think we're going out of Kali Yuga, but I'm like, well, I think we could be, as I said the other day, moving into Treta Yuga. In any case, we are definitely moving towards a space where what is understood without words is what is going to be important. That's where the real information comes from. And I think the secret of the moon is that that's where the information is now. But because we've been taught to not pay any attention to that, we're like, oh, that's just emotional stuff. That's just this and that. And to be fair, your emotions can sometimes get out of control. And that's what I think Cartouche was trying to say about the current environment. It was like, okay, just wait. It's understood that you're having a feeling about this, but just wait before you decide what the outcome is as a result of that feeling. People are having feelings, and the only thing that they can say is just kind of like, okay, be in the moment, recognize that the moment's uncertain, recognizing that change is not always, without pain, right? That it's not always without difficulty. But that the other side of this is not, like they said, the outcome is not fixed. It's not like, oh, okay, we're moving into this world and this is going to happen and we're all effed and this and that. It's just kind of like, no, what's going on now is not set. It's not set. So it just kind of reminds you when we say go with the flow, right? Now, again, especially if you feel something's going to affect you personally or affect your ability to do something, it may causing a limitation, affecting your goals, then obviously that's going to be something that you are, freaked out about. You know what I mean? Like that's going to be something that you, that will unsettle you and may cause sleepless nights. But I think what this is trying to say is that, the emotional reaction is understood, but this is the time when you want to access your intuitive knowing. You want to get your instincts about where things are going. But you also want to remain grounded. You want to focus on just don't stop what you're doing. Don't throw your hands up in futility, right? Keep moving forward, even if you're just inching forward one day at a time. Keep moving forward and deal with things as they come, because it seems like there's a lot that's going on right now. Like literally every time I question it, I get the answer I get back is just, this is not the end of the story here. There's more that's going to happen. And of course, yes, people worry that's the thing, like, oh my God, is it going to get worse and worse? And the answer is no. This is a transient period where things are going to, this kind of painful tussling until things get into a more balanced place where they're not at the moment, but they will. This is kind of that last gasp we were talking about. So anyway, let's pull a few cards for today, and I'm just going to go ahead and use the Rider-Waite deck today, since I could use the kitty cat deck, I guess, but this is the one I have in my hand. Okay. So let's see. Let's do a regular reading with this, the one that we normally do. Whoops. Let's drop that. Oh, that's interesting. Got 2 majors so far, for those of you keeping score. Okay. Oh my God. Okay. Wow. Kind of to the point of what I was saying today. Okay, as you know, this is a 5-card reading that I do, and 4 of them are major arcana. Okay, so this is big energies that we respond to rather than what we then initiate. Okay, and our center one, here's our patriarchy, right? Here's our Hierophant. Okay, there's that patriarchal energy, you know, tradition, traditional authority, traditional spiritual authority. You know, typically, I think the Hierophant tends to have to do with this this very masculine spiritual energy. Okay, I think that might be the best way to put it. I mean, sometimes it can represent other things. This card can come up when, you know, you're talking about somebody who is, you know, a legitimate spiritual mentor, or somebody who's taking a higher level of commitment to something. I mean, yes, that does come up. In this reading, though, I feel like this just has to do with this very traditional masculine spiritual energy. The inner feeling of which we are unaware is the Lovers. Now, of course, this is Gemini energy. Hierophant is Taurus. Taurus is fixed. Gemini is mutable. Gemini has to do with shifts and changes, right? So we have the Lovers here. And okay, in this particular case, again, the Lovers can have to do with choices. But I feel here it has to do more with, like, it's more like the twin energy. The fact that there needs to be 2 working together, not just one. So to me, this is like that blending of masculine and feminine energies. Like, they need to come together internally. And being that the Lovers often has to do with not only a desire to reach out and connect with others, but also, you know, this is about choosing a new road or choosing a new path. I think both of those things can apply here. So there's a new road, and this is a road that involves, you know, both. This is not a road that's just about, you know, just about this guy. And, you know, we have the Archangel who's kind of standing over this. That's interesting. I feel like, was it in one of Sam's readings? I can't remember, but there's like this red and purple thing that's going on. There's been a lot with red and purple. I know when I was working with Jenny, she was seeing a lot of red and purple. And I know that when I was doing Reiki for somebody, and I also got a lot of red and purple. There's like a lot of red and purple energy. It's kind of interesting. But yeah, there's this, this is what's going on internally. There's a need for connection. There's a need for love. Because remember, we said one of the elements of this particular time period is we might feel isolated. We might feel on the outside. So this is a desire for this connection. And Sam says, yes, yeah, there's this desire for connection. And when we think about it, if red has to do with the root chakra, the Muladhara, and the colors of Babylon too. Yes, yeah, that's actually a really good point. And good morning, Alistair. I didn't see you were on there. Yeah, Babylon is, yes, and Babylon has to do with the Sephirah of Binah. We're talking about it's both what's coming into manifestation and then what's going out, what's being disintegrated, right? So that's definitely this Babylon energy for sure. But you could think of it as being like the, you know, Shakti and Shiva as well, like the root chakra and also the top. Some people look at the crown chakra as white. Some people do see it in these violet colors. Certainly, you know, with this area, we think of as violet. So it's almost like the connecting of that kind of divine connection, that divine Kundalini connection that goes on. And yeah, and bringing the Babylon thing into it's a very good point as well, because that is that feminine energy. I think it was Joanne's friend, Christina Marble, who had posted yesterday about the way in which dark feminine energy is coming in and coming up. And, you know, I think I commented on that. I don't know whether she saw it or cared about it, but, you know, but I had posted something about it. And yeah, the fact that, because when I look back at it, I'm like, yeah, why was I doing a podcast on the dark feminine? I'm like, well, this is the this is the energy that we need to negotiate here. And the only reason this energy is dark is because we have put it in shadow, and we have developed all kinds of fears around it. So external feeling of which we're aware. 10 of Cups. Okay, again, connection, community, happiness, but not just happiness in the sense of I've got mine, happiness in the sense of, you know, we're all happy, the community's happy, we're joyful, you know, this is positive family energy, right? This is positive energy of getting what we wish, and and connecting and coming together. Now that's interesting that it's coming up as an external. A lot of us may feel that this is not the case, but this is saying no, this is like there's this movement towards harmony. Okay, now the card that is the advice card is the Chariot. Okay, so again, Cancer energy, back to the moon, right? Chariot is Cancer energy. It has a lot to do with the time period around July. And actually, I feel like that might be relevant because a lot of the astrology that's very difficult right now, you're going to be seeing shifts in July. You're going to see Venus moving into Gemini and conjuncting Uranus, and that could bring about very positive material changes for people. Like that could be a very and then Venus, of course, moving into Taurus before that. Where she's comfortable, there's definitely the sense that we are, our values are changing, that we are doing something different. So there's definitely, certainly I'm looking around June, July, Cancer period of time, that things could be changing. But chariot also means keep control of your chariot, right? Like keep moving. Don't back off and stand still and say, oh, no, this is, I just need to freeze in place. Like my friend called it, crisis paralysis, where we think, oh, I'm doomed. I'm not going to be able to do anything. I'm stuck. Or we immediately start, stocking up the survivalist shelter. We kind of go one way or the other. We kind of start running around. And this is like, no, stay your course. Keep control of your chariot. Okay. And the outcome card, you're all just going to love this one, is the Tower. Okay. So the Tower, speaking of what I just said, is that Uranian energy. So this Uranian energy coming into the space of, during the time of Cancer, kind of the space of Cancer. So that almost strikes me as saying, like, okay, we're in the middle of this kind of breakdown of things, and we are going to be moving into, this space where we're moving towards a balance. But I think there's a reminder that, we're not there yet. But this is also a reminder that there are forces that are beyond us right now. That so the people who want to try to limit our lives, or limit who we are, or limit our identity, or control us in some way, that's part of this transient, as Azrael would say, like the sting, the grasp, of moving out of that, space, and that we just have to hang tight. But yeah, things are, things are. It's not saying things aren't falling apart, but it is saying that there's going to be a big shakeup. So we can't look at what's going on right now and say, oh, this is going to be what it is. And the fact that I'm seeing all these cards that show connection and harmony, it's more or less saying, yeah, we have to break down old structures before we can get to that point. So kind of almost, again, keep control of your chariot, keep moving forward. I know we're past time, but I'm going to draw one more card, or two actually, essential oil cards. Our two oil cards are Focus and Lang Lang. And the Focus card, the keyword is empowered. The trigger statement is, I don't want to be here. I've heard that a lot this week. The true statement is, I'm exactly where I need to be. And it says, you are ready to allow the energy from the divine and Mother Earth to fuel you as you fulfill your potential here. Okay. So, man, we've talked a lot about focus, right? Focus on where you are. Our second card, the keyword is awaken. Okay. The trigger statement is, I don't know what to do. The true statement is, every moment is a new opportunity. Okay. Again, we're back into that space of, how do we use the energy of destruction creatively, right? Take time today to engage your senses and create. The tension that's been dividing your head and heart is leaving. Okay. So that is our thing for today. But I feel like we're all kind of being provoked to kind of make the leap to the heart here. That we have not by any means, like I said, if we don't like where things are ending up right now, do remember it's not the end. So that's it for me today. Thank you guys for joining me. Very much appreciate everybody coming on the live stream and being here and interacting and participating. Enjoy having all of you here. I hope you all have a great Tuesday. Remember what day of the week it is. And I will be back tomorrow, probably talking a little bit about the full moon in Leo tomorrow. But yeah, we will see what pops up for tomorrow. So all of you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you then.